A human guest, a royal mistake. Jack never expected to be invited to a royal alien wedding. He was just a repair tech from Earth, working in the outer colonies. He fixed broken machines, quiet systems, and old satellites. Nothing special. Nothing royal. But 3 days ago, he had saved a Falari communication satellite from crashing. The Falari were a proud alien race, known for their silver skin, glowing eyes, and strict traditions. Their empire stretched across 12 star systems. After fixing the satellite, Jack received a small thank you from a diplomat. Just a message, just a smile. But now here he stood, outside a palace made of glowing stone, holding a golden invitation in his hand. Guards in shining armor bowed as he approached. He looked around, confused. Was this real? You are guest Jack, the fixer of stars? One of the guards asked, bowing deeply. Yeah, Jack said slowly. I just fixed your satellite. You are honored, the guard replied. Please follow us. The princess awaits. Jack blinked. Princess? He was led through tall, glowing halls filled with music and laughter. Aliens in flowing robes danced under blue lights. Crystals floated in the air like drifting snowflakes. Everything felt like a dream. Soon, Jack was given special clothes. Fine fabric, soft and silver, and brought into a large chamber. A circle of fire burned at the center, surrounded by rows of high-ranking guests. At the front stood the emperor, the empress, and the princess herself. She was beautiful, tall, graceful, with silver hair and bright violet eyes. Her name was Princess Yelani. Jack stood frozen as she looked at him and smiled. The priest stepped forward and raised his arms. Today we honor the ancient bond, he said. The princess will now choose her match. Her heart has already spoken. Jack felt something wrong in the air. Wait, he thought. I'm not the groom, right? Then the lights dimmed. The music stopped. The fire glowed bright red. The princess walked slowly into the circle. She looked directly at Jack. Then she reached out her hand. I choose him, she said. A gasp filled the room. The emperor's eyes widened. The nobles looked shocked. Jack tried to speak. I think this is a mistake. But before he could finish, the priest shouted, The bond is sealed! A bright light flashed. The fire turned white. The ground shook softly. The princess took Jack's hand and placed a glowing ring around his finger. The priest declared, They are one. The crowd stood in silence. No music played. No cheers came. Jack looked around. His mouth opened. No words came out. I didn't mean to. He tried again. But the princess leaned close and whispered, You said you fix broken things. Right now I'm the most broken. Jack felt her fingers squeeze his. He didn't understand. Was this a game? A trick? A royal joke? He was rushed out of the chamber before he could speak again. Servants surrounded him, cheering and bowing. Alien. Cameras floated beside him, taking pictures. He was taken to a royal room filled with silk pillows and sweet-smelling fruit. Jack sat down, still wearing the glowing ring. What just happened? He whispered to himself. A servant entered with a smile. Congratulations, royal consort. Wait, consort? Jack stood up. I didn't agree to anything. The servant blinked. She chose you. The law is clear. The bond is made. No, one can break it. Jack rubbed his face. This had to be a mistake. He didn't even know the princess. He didn't even speak her language well. But in that moment, he remembered something. The way she had looked at him. There was no joke in her eyes. No laughter. Just something sad and deep. Jack sighed and looked down at the glowing ring. He had come here for cake and music. Now he was married to a royal alien princess. He sat back down and muttered, This is gonna be a long week. Outside his door, a shadow moved. A jealous noble watched him through the cracks. His hand tightened around a hidden blade. A human, the noble whispered. This will not stand. The bride who won't let go. Jack woke up to the soft sound of alien music drifting through the walls. The scent of flowers he couldn't name filled the air. He sat up slowly, his head still spinning from last night's strange events. The glowing ring on his finger hadn't faded. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. He touched it carefully, hoping it would just slide off like a normal ring. It didn't. Instead, it sent a light shock through his hand, followed by a quiet whisper in alien tongue, something ceremonial and ancient. He couldn't understand the words, but they felt final. Before he could try again, the door to his royal chamber opened without warning. Princess Yolani entered, alone. She wore a simple robe now, not the heavy dress from the wedding ritual. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders, and her eyes were soft, tired, but focused. Jack stood up quickly, unsure if he was supposed to bow or speak or stay silent. "You're awake," she said in a calm voice. Not cold, not happy. Just quiet. "Yeah," Jack replied, scratching the back of his neck. "Look, I think there's been a big, mix-up." Yolani raised an eyebrow. "You do not wish to be my consort?" Jack laughed nervously. "I didn't even know I was being considered. I thought I was just here for the food and dancing." She looked away, walking slowly around the room. "My people needed a symbol of peace. Someone different. Someone not controlled by our council. So you picked me?" She stopped and turned. "You smiled at me in the market 3 days ago. No one ever smiles at me like that, not even my guards." Jack blinked. "That's it? You married me because I smiled?" Yolani looked down. "I also knew you were kind. And good. You fixed our satellite when no one else could." He felt his chest tighten a little. He wanted to be angry, to say she trapped him, used him. But she didn't sound like someone who played games. She sounded like someone desperate for something real. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," Jack said softly. Yolani stepped closer. "You didn't. But now that we're bonded, they will come for us." Before Jack could ask who they were, a loud knock echoed from the door. A servant opened it quickly. "My lady, the council requests your presence urgently." Yolani didn't move. She stared at Jack for a long moment, then walked to him and gently placed her hand over his. "Please," she said, "stay in this room. Don't leave. Not yet. They will be watching." After she left, the silence returned. Jack sat down again, staring at the glowing ring. What did he just get pulled into? He tried to recall what he knew about the Falari Empire. Strict laws, ancient traditions. A royal bond was sacred, unchangeable once sealed in fire. He opened a drawer and found a small alien device. It blinked and projected a hologram of last night's ritual. There he was, standing awkwardly. The princess, smiling softly. The priest, chanting. The fire, rising. And then, the light. The bond. There was no way to undo it. No oops sorry button. It was done. A soft beep pulled his attention to the wall. A hidden panel opened, and a strange figure stepped into the room. The alien wore dark blue robes and had sharp yellow eyes. His voice was smooth, too smooth. "Human," he said. "My name is Lord Silrek. I serve the true interests of the Empire." Jack stood up slowly. "How did you get in here?" Silrek smiled. "I go where I please. And right now I've come to offer you a gift." He opened his palm. A small device hovered above it, shaped like a needle. "Press this to your neck. It will erase the bond. Quietly, painlessly. No one will know. Not even her." Jack's eyes widened. "Why would I want to do that?" Silrek's voice turned, cold. "Because you do not belong here, and because if you stay, others will not be so gentle." Jack didn't move. His heart beat faster. He stared at the floating device. "And what happens to her if I leave?" he asked. Silrek tilted his head. "She will be punished for the failure. Her titles removed. Maybe worse. But you'll be free. Choice. Stay and risk everything. Or press the device and vanish from this madness." Jack looked down at his hand. The glowing ring still pulsed, slow and steady. Then he remembered her words. "Right now, I am the most broken. He stepped back. Tell the council, Jack said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. Silrek's smile faded, his eyes narrowed. Then may your courage comfort you, he said, disappearing into the shadows. The panel slid shut behind him. Jack let out a long breath. He was in way over his head. But if he walked away now, who would protect the one person who saw him as more than just a guest? He looked out the window. The stars above were cold and silent. But somewhere in the palace, a princess stood alone, fighting for her future. And Jack had just chosen to stand with her, even if it cost him everything. Enemies in the palace. Jack didn't sleep that night, not because the bed was too soft or the lights too strange, but because someone had offered him a way out, and he had said no. Now he couldn't stop wondering what that choice had really cost him. Outside his window, the alien city shimmered like silver fire beneath the stars. From this high tower, everything looked peaceful. But inside these walls, something ugly was moving. Something quiet, something deadly. Jack got up and walked to the window again, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. He could still hear Lord Silrek's voice in his mind. Then may your courage comfort you. The way he said it, as if he knew Jack wouldn't survive the next few days. A sharp knock shattered the silence. Jack turned fast. His hand reached for a small metal tool on the table, his only weapon. The door opened slowly, but instead of a soldier or assassin, it was her. Princess. Yelani stepped inside, her eyes dark and focused. They called an emergency meeting, she said. You refused the release device. Jack nodded. How do you know? Because Silrek just left my father's chambers. Furious, she walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. They wanted you to leave quietly. Erase the bond. Make me look like a foolish girl who misread the ritual. The shame would have silenced me forever. Jack sat across from her. Why would they go that far just to stop a marriage? Yelani looked up. Because this bond changes everything. It gives me power they can't control. He frowned. I don't follow. She stood, walked to a panel in the wall and opened it. A glowing screen showed moving lines and alien text, like charts or maps. In Falari law, she explained, a royal consort chosen during the fire ritual becomes a binding voice in council decisions. Your voice, a human voice. And you were not trained by them. Jack stared at the screen, then back at her. You chose me to change your empire? Yelani didn't smile. I chose you because you weren't like them. But now they see you as a threat. A loud thud echoed from somewhere below. Then another, distant but deliberate. Yelani froze. Jack grabbed his tool again. What was that? She moved toward the door. I told them you wouldn't leave. So now they'll try to scare you. Or worse. Jack followed her into the hallway. It was dim and empty, too quiet for a royal palace. Where are your guards? He whispered. Gone, she replied. Silrek pulled them from my post. He said they were needed for security elsewhere. As they turned a corner, a shadow moved behind them. Jack spun, too late. A tall figure leapt forward, knife flashing in the dim light. Yelani shouted something in her language. Jack raised his arm, caught the attack with his tool, sparks flying. The blade missed his face by inches. He shoved the attacker back and Yelani kicked the figure to the ground. The would-be assassin scrambled to his feet and ran. Yelani pressed a button on her bracelet and the hallway lit up with alarms. Guards came rushing in, but not to help. They stood still, eyes cold, waiting for instructions. What is the meaning of this? One of them asked flatly. Yelani pointed. We were attacked. Call the security record, track the intruder. The guards didn't move. Jack stepped forward. Are you deaf? She was almost stabbed. The head guard looked at Jack, then at the princess. We will report this, he said before turning and walking away. Jack stared in disbelief. They don't care. Yelani looked down. They care, just not about us. A few hours later, back in the royal chambers, Jack stared at the bandage on his arm. Yelani sat across from him again, quiet and thoughtful. I didn't sign up for this, Jack said. I was just trying to fix a satellite. She nodded. I know. But if you need me, he added, I won't run. She looked at him for a long time. They will try again, she said. Maybe not with knives next time. Maybe poison, or shame, or something worse. Then teach me, Jack said. She blinked. I'm a tech. I learn fast. Teach me your ways, your laws, your history. If they want a royal consort, I'll be one, but on my terms. For the first time, Yelani smiled. Just a little. Jack saw something behind that smile. Not hope exactly, but the beginning of it. As the night wore on, she showed him documents, files, hidden archives. He listened, learned, and asked questions no Falari dared to ask. When the stars above began to fade into morning light, Jack stood at the window again. He didn't feel like a guest anymore. He felt like a target. But he also felt something else. A reason to stay. The truth about the princess, Jack had always believed the truth was something you could touch. A wire was broken, or it wasn't. A signal was strong, or it failed. Truth was like circuits, logical, clean, and without lies. But now, as he sat in a hidden archive chamber beneath the palace, he was beginning to understand something new. Truth wasn't always clean. Sometimes it was buried in shadows. Sometimes it was designed to be forgotten. The archive room was cold and quiet, sealed with old tech that only a few remembered how to use. Yelani had shown him the way in, whispered the access code, and left him alone. Learn what they erased, she had said, and you'll understand why they fear you. He stood before a wall of strange panels, blinking slowly in blue light. Alien symbols danced across the surface like soft rain. Jack raised his hand and activated the translator device he'd reprogrammed himself. The screen shifted. Now it showed records, logs, private messages. He scrolled until one file caught his eye, marked with a forbidden seal. It pulsed red. Princess Yelani. Command history. He hesitated, then opened it. The first video showed a young Yelani standing in front of a fleet admiral. She was just 16 then, wearing a training suit. Her voice trembled as she argued against a raid on a peaceful moon. These people are healers, she said. They have no weapons. They don't even know we exist. Why strike them? The admiral's reply was cold. Because their land holds crystal veins, power veins. We cannot let them grow beyond us. Yelani stepped forward. Then we are no better than the ones we fought to escape. The screen froze. Jack sat down staring. She had stood against her own fleet, alone. Another file loaded. Years later, during her first vote as part of the Royal Circle. The topic, whether to authorize genetic testing on orphaned children in border colonies. Yelani stood again. We do not experiment on the weak, she said, her voice steady. If our science cannot grow without pain, then we are not evolving. We are collapsing. The room had gone silent. Then, one by one, the other nobles voted against her. File after file painted a picture the galaxy had never seen. Not a spoiled royal, not a distant heir, but a quiet rebel. A woman fighting inside a cage of golden rules. And now, she had chosen Jack, not by mistake, not in a moment of madness, but because he was the one variable the Empire couldn't predict. He leaned back in the cold chair, mind racing. All this time, he thought he was the one out of place, the human who didn't belong. But maybe, just maybe, it was the princess who had never belonged. A soft buzz echoed in the chamber. His wristband blinked. Yelani's signal. He answered quickly. Her voice was tense. You need to come now. To the observatory. Jack didn't ask why. He just ran. He followed the old tunnels she showed him before, pathways unused by most of the palace. His boots tapped lightly over the stone floors as lights flickered above. When he reached the observatory dome, he found her standing alone under a massive glass ceiling. Above them, stars glowed in silence. She turned as he approached. Something in her expression was different, less controlled, more afraid. They've chosen a new match for me, she said quietly. One of the council's own sons. Jack stepped closer. What? They say the bond can still be overwritten if I'm declared mentally unfit. Jack's chest tightened. That's insane. Yelani didn't answer. She just stared up at the stars. His name is Xar, she said. He was trained as a commander since childhood. He's strong, brilliant, and he's already killed 2 rivals. Jack swallowed hard. They're going to make you marry him? Yes, she said. Unless we do something first. He walked beside her, standing shoulder to shoulder. I saw everything, he said. The way you stood up to them, all those files, all those votes. She didn't turn to look at him. Then you understand why they want me gone. Jack nodded. And why I won't leave you. Yelani looked at him then, really looked. No walls, no mask. Just a woman, tired of fighting alone. You don't have to stay, she whispered. You've done more than anyone expected. You could run, hide. No one would blame you. Jack smiled softly. I fix broken things, remember? He gently reached out and touched her hand. And right now, he said, we've got a whole empire to fix. Yelani took a shaky breath. Then she squeezed his hand back. The stars above blinked like distant eyes. But down below, something new was rising. Not war, not betrayal, not silence, but the beginning of something that might finally change everything. Hunted by the Empire, Jack never thought a royal palace could feel like a prison. But now, as he ran through the shadowed halls behind Princess Yelani, his heart pounding and his breath short, it felt exactly like that. They weren't just being watched anymore. They were being hunted. Keep moving, Yelani whispered, her voice low and steady. They'll close the gate soon. They passed a row of silent statues, old emperors carved from glowing stone, but Jack barely noticed them. His eyes were on the dark corners, the ceiling vents, the doors they passed too quickly to check. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every step could be their last. Only hours earlier, Jack had stood beside Yelani in the observatory, holding her hand as they looked at the stars. But something had changed the moment they left. Guards were missing from their posts. Servants wouldn't look them in the eye. A strange silence had fallen over the upper halls. Then came the message. A whisper, sent through a hacked console. The vote has passed. The princess is unfit. Consort to be replaced. Prepare extraction. Those weren't empty words. They were a warning. Within minutes, alarms had started to blink silently. No sound. Just flashes of red in the upper corners. Quiet purge. No witnesses. They reached an old metal door behind the servants' quarters. Jack scanned it quickly. It's locked from Central Command, he muttered, fingers flying across the controls. Yelani looked behind them. Jack pulled a coil. From his belt, a tiny power spike generator he'd built during his spare time. Never know when you need a shortcut, he said, grinning as sparks shot out and the lock hissed open. They slipped inside and the door shut with a soft click. Beyond it was darkness. Where are we now? Jack asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Yelani pulled a torch from the wall. Old tunnels. From the war centuries ago. Forgotten by most. But my mother used to hide here as a child. Your mother was a fighter too? Yelani didn't smile. No. She just liked silence. They moved forward slowly, guided only by torchlight and the soft hum of Jack's wrist device tracking movement nearby. We can't stay in the city, she whispered. Czar's family controls the border patrol. They'll block every port, every gate. Then we don't go through the gates, Jack replied. We go through the walls. Yelani frowned. What? Jack tapped the side of her torch with his tool, causing it to flicker to a deeper orange. If we can reach the old construction line, there's a tunnel that leads beneath the southern tower. Emergency maintenance path. Even the council forgot. It exists. And you know this because... Jack gave her a look. I fix things, and I read maps when I get bored. Yelani stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Then lead the way, consort. They moved quickly but carefully. Jack felt the stale air grow heavier, the walls tighter, but what struck him most was how Yelani walked. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She wasn't acting delicate or royal. She moved like someone who had made peace with danger, like someone who had waited her whole life to run, but never had the chance. At one point, they stopped in a narrow chamber to catch their breath. Jack leaned against the cold wall, rubbing his arms. Yelani stood across from him, staring into the torch flame. They always said I was too soft, she said, quietly. Too emotional, too human, some of them whispered, as if that were an insult. Jack looked at her. Maybe they were right. Her eyes snapped up. No, not like that, he added. I mean, maybe being a little human is exactly what this empire needs. She didn't answer, but the corners of her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. They pressed on. Finally, they reached the exit shaft, a narrow climb up a rusted ladder to the southern tower's outer wall. Jack went first, testing each step. Yelani followed, torch tied to her back. As they neared the top, Jack's device blinked. 2 red dots. Approaching from above, he hissed down, "Guards incoming!" Yelani paused. "How many?" "Just 2. We can't turn back. But I've got an idea." He reached into his tool bag and pulled out a light distortion node, something he'd built just for fun. It could bend shadows, make a person seem invisible for 5 seconds. He placed it in her hand. "Take it. When I move, press this and climb." "What about you?" Jack smiled. "I'll distract them." Before she could argue, he climbed fast and burst out into the open. The guards turned, weapons raised. "You!" one of them barked. Yeah, I know," Jack said, arms raised. "Royal property, broken law, whatever. But before you arrest me, you should know. You're both standing on a structural weak spot." They blinked. Jack slammed his tool into the ground. A hidden panel beneath them gave way and both guards fell with a surprised cry. Yelani appeared seconds later, eyes wide. "You dropped them into a service chute." "Yeah," Jack panted. "They'll survive. Probably. Maybe." She laughed. "For real this time. Just once." Then they ran together, vanishing into the night. Behind them, alarms finally rang out across the empire. The hunt was no longer quiet. The game had changed. And now, the empire wasn't just chasing a rebel princess. They were chasing the human who refused to run. Rise of the human consort. Jack had never stood on a royal floor with so many eyes fixed on him. Not with suspicion this time, but with fear. And something else. Something even sharper. Doubt. Across from him stood Lord Tsar. Taller. Stronger. Draped in golden armor that hummed with quiet power. His eyes held the kind of cold that didn't come from space. It came from cruelty. He wasn't just here to take the throne. He was here to erase Yelani, to erase everything she stood for, and Jack was now the last thing standing in his way. Just days ago, Jack had been running through tunnels with a torch in his hand, trying to survive. But now, he walked beside Yelani through the grand hall of voices beneath the towering statues of former rulers in front of nobles who had already decided he was a mistake. His boots were still dusty, his jacket patched in 2 places, but his back was straight. And he wasn't hiding anymore. Yelani walked beside him, quiet but unshaken. Not dressed as a bride or a runaway, but in ceremonial robes older than her empire, robes meant for queens who ruled during times of war and uncertainty. The message was clear. They were not asking for permission anymore. They had returned to challenge the council itself. "Bring forth the bondbreaker," Tsar called out, stepping forward. "The human has no bloodline, no worth, no right. Let the old law remove him." The chamber echoed with murmurs. The bondbreaker, a cruel tradition, used only in the darkest corners of the empire. Jack didn't understand all the rules, but he understood what it meant when they brought out the silver spear. He looked at Yelani. "What's happening?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward, eyes locked with the High Chancellor. "Before this challenge is honored," Yelani said, her voice steady, "the human consort demands the right of balance." More whispers. Gasps. The High Chancellor leaned forward. "You cannot invoke that. The right hasn't been used in 500 years. Jack stepped forward too. "Then maybe it's time someone used it again." The hall fell into silence. The right of balance was older than most of the Council's power. It came from a time when emperors were chosen not just by blood or war, but by reason, skill, and courage. And under this right, 2 challengers were tested, not with weapons, but with truth. Tests of mind, memory, and logic. Xar laughed as the challenge was accepted. "You wish to beat me in a contest of thought? I was trained in 10 dimensions of logic. I calculate starship vectors in my sleep." Jack shrugged. "Cool. I just fixed your Empire's broken satellite using a paperclip, a music player, and a wet sock." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Surprised, uncertain. Xar's eyes narrowed. The first challenge began. A sphere floated between them, projecting holograms of interstellar trade routes, broken equations, and ancient scripts. Each question came fast, designed to confuse, but Jack didn't blink. He let instinct guide him. Every puzzle was a machine, every mystery a circuit waiting to be read. Xar moved fast, too fast. He was trained to win. But Jack was trained to fix, and fixing, Jack realized, required more than just answers. It required patience, curiosity, and a refusal to give up when things didn't make sense. The final question was a logic gate collapse, an unsolvable paradox. Xar overcalculated. His answer looped into itself. The system froze. Jack just looked at the core and smiled. He didn't try to solve it. He bypassed it. He rerouted the logic system, creating a second path that didn't need a solution. The room gasped as the sphere turned green. Challenge complete. The High Chancellor stood. The human has passed. The bond remains. Xar's face turned to stone, but Yelani wasn't done. She stepped forward, her voice ringing out. And now I call for the Unity Decree. This was the moment they had planned for in secret. The Unity Decree. A law buried under centuries of war and division. A law that allowed a royal pair, chosen outside noble bloodlines, to introduce a single proposal before the Empire and demand a vote from the people. We ask for freedom of choice, she said. No more arranged unions. No more blood-forged alliances. If we are to survive, let love, not strategy, guide the throne. Xar roared in anger. You disgrace everything our ancestors bled for. Jack stepped beside her, calm. Then maybe it's time we stop bleeding. The crowd outside the palace had grown large. For the first time, the gates had been opened for public viewing. Thousands watched on silent screens as the vote began. One by one, citizens from across the stars cast their thoughts into the air. The old council's grip was slipping, and when the final voice spoke, a child's voice from a colony far from the center, the decree passed. Unity was law. Xar was escorted away, not defeated in battle, but in something rarer, truth and change. Jack turned to Yelani. The firelight from the chamber ceiling glowed in her silver hair. What now? He asked. She smiled at him, truly smiled. Now we begin. And for the first time, Jack didn't feel like a guest. He didn't feel like a mistake. He felt like someone who had helped break something ancient, and maybe helped build something new. The galaxy's most unexpected royal couple, the hall that once echoed with cold silence now rang with voices, real ones. Not whispers from noble lips, not secret orders behind closed doors, but laughter, questions, and even disagreement. And that, Princess Yelani said, was exactly the point. A new age had begun. The Unity Decree passed. The ancient laws had bent, some had broken, and standing at the center of it all was a dusty human technician from a mining colony, and the once soft royal daughter who had chosen him. Jack didn't want a throne. He never had. He didn't care about ceremonies, banners, or power. He didn't even like dressing up. But the galaxy had seen something different in him, not because he was special, but because he was willing to stand beside someone who was, and that made all the difference. Weeks passed. The Empire didn't collapse. It breathed. Alien ships began arriving from distant systems, not for war, but to speak, to listen, to trade. New agreements were written, this time with room for consent. The Royal Council was reshaped, half chosen by vote, half appointed by ability. No more bloodlines without merit. And Jack? He built something else. Not a palace, not a fortress, but a school. Deep in the city's center, in an old forgotten plaza, Jack laid the foundation for what he called the Open Circle, a center for shared learning between species. No titles, no blood requirements, just knowledge and invention. Kids from border worlds, servants' children, off-worlders, and former street runners all sat together, learning code, systems repair, and philosophy from alien masters and human engineers alike. "We don't fix empires," Jack once said to a group of students. "We fix what's in front of us, one broken thing at a time. That's enough." And Yelani, she changed too, but not in the way the nobles feared. She didn't become a warrior queen. She didn't rule with fire. Instead, she walked through her empire like a healer with open hands. She listened to the people they'd once ignored, miners, traders, refugees. She visited forgotten moons and sat with village elders who barely believed she was real. And whenever someone asked why she brought a human consort to such places, she always gave the same answer: because he never needed to be more than he was. And still, he changed everything. The wedding ceremony, the real one, came quietly. No floating golden thrones, no blinding lights. Just a starlit garden in the lower palace, a circle of friends, some curious students, and two people who never expected to find each other in a galaxy full of cold metal and stranger stars. Yelani wore robes of silver and blue, stitched by hand from every region of the Empire. Jack wore his old boots and a suit someone forced him into, still grumbling about the tight collar. But when he saw her walking toward him under that glowing sky, he forgot every word he had planned. There were no vows in Falari tradition, only the binding of hands over a shared flame. They stood together. The fire glowed between their palms, and then softly, so softly it might have gone unnoticed, Jack whispered, "This time, I know exactly what I'm doing." Yelani smiled, eyes damp. "And this time, you're not alone." News spread fast, not because it was grand, but because it was different. A royal wedding without power games. An alliance not made of strategy, but love. Some called it madness. Some said it wouldn't last. But the people, they called it hope. Years later, a statue was raised, not in the capital but on a quiet moon where the first unity vote had reached the stars. The statue was simple, not of a king or a queen, but of a man and a woman, sitting side by side. Hands joined, tools at their feet. The plaque read, "They fixed what others thought could never be repaired." And somewhere in the galaxy, far from the politics and noise, a former technician and a not-so-perfect princess flew together in a small ship, visiting broken outposts, listening to new voices, and finding beauty in forgotten corners. No armies, no crowns, just two people who had survived every trap, every lie, every impossible choice, and turned a mistake into a miracle.